In my 80 square foot colony, in part of our animal barn, I keep one adult breeding buck in with my 5 adult breeding does. Ronwin is a mix of mostly New Zealand and a bit of American. He is about a year old and has sired 164 kits to date, all here in this colony. He lives here in the colony with all the other rabbits 24/7. Our rabbit colony is a little over 80 square feet total. We have 8 breeders in here and their kits till weaning at 4 to 6 weeks old. In addition to our 1 buck and 5 adult does, we also have 2 junior does who will be having their first litters in the next few months when they decide to be bred. Nowadays, I am completely confident in keeping my buck in my colony, but when I first started looking into colony setups, I had some worries. One concern I had when I first started keeping a buck full-time in the colony was overbreeding. As I was researching, people said that the does control the breeding, so a buck forcing a doe to breed too often wasn't an issue, but I was a bit skeptical at first. However, when I tried it, I found does actually do control their breedings quite well. None of the 4 bucks I've kept in the colony have ever forced a doe to breed, and our does have always chosen when they get pregnant. I have found in my years of colony raising that Ronwin doesn't take too kindly to new adult does introduced in his colony. We had 1 doe who needed to be taken out of the colony, and when properly introduced back in, he was very insistent in trying to breed her, and he would chase her around the colony all the time. When we tried to add a completely new adult doe in, he didn't accept her either. I'm not sure if this is just a flaw in him personally, or if bucks in general are like this. But both doe kits we've kept for breeding that were born and raised in the colony, he has no issues with. So if we add any new does in the future, they will either be kits born and raised here or kits introduced at a very young age. In addition to our breeders, we have newborn litters, young kits, and 2 grow-out age does in our colony as mentioned before. And like overbreeding, I started out a bit worried about how a buck would act towards our babies. I am now glad to report that, like the overbreeding issue, the seasoned people with actual experience were right rather than the horror stories. All 4 bucks I've had in colonies over the years have been the model of perfection when it comes to kits. Our current buck Ronwin will often peek in occasionally when a doe is giving birth, if the nest box style allows it. He doesn't ever jump in or interrupt the doe in labor, and once a mama is finished and comes out, he leaves the new litter alone, except to peek his head in every once in a while. So he is generally disinterested in young litters in their nest boxes. When the kits come out of the nest box and start becoming more mobile, he tends to like to snuggle them though. So be warned, if you keep a buck in your colony, there will be lots of snuggles, both with your does and the kits. I've never had any of my bucks eat a litter or harm any of the kits in any way. Ronwin is also very good about not hounding my junior does. They are getting up to breeding age soon, but he isn't trying to breed them or stressing them out in any way. Another worry that I had put to rest by experience was our buck's actions towards pregnant does. While he does do his job as a buck, he doesn't hound any of our pregnant does or stress them out. Throughout their pregnancy, I will occasionally see him tentatively trying to mount them, and if they haven't been bred yet, they may accept him. But if they don't want to be bred or are already pregnant, they either tuck their tails in so he can't reach, or hop away from him, and he very calmly accepts their choice. Sometimes he will pursue them a bit, especially if they just gave birth, and may decide to be bred again, but if they continue to refuse him, he leaves them alone quite readily. This has also been the case for 2 of my other colony bucks. The third was, I thought, a bit too pushy when trying to breed does, so I replaced him with Ronwin. It is important, of course, to make sure my buck isn't trying to breed too aggressively and stressing out the does or causing discomfort in the colony. But it's also important that he does his job as a buck. Breedings and breeding attempts aren't bad, it's just too much and too aggressively that's bad. Sometimes I will see a doe get bred, sometimes I don't. Sometimes does let a buck rebreed them while they're pregnant, which made me a bit worried at first. But most of the time, they don't drop eggs to be fertilized, and they have 1 litter as usual. I did only have one case in all my years of colony raising where one of our does had 2 litters growing in her at once. The first litter was born dead, and the other came out 2 weeks later. But in dozens and dozens of rabbit pregnancies, it's only happened to me once. And the great thing is, it's not just me that was lucky enough to have a buck who was an angel in the colony. It's actually quite common to have a good colony buck in my experience, and what I hear and see from others with similar setups. While it's true that one of my 4 colony bucks was a bit more aggressive than I would like, the other 3 have been totally great. Of course, there are bad bucks out there that may kill kits or constantly try to breed does, but I'd say those cases are very, very rare. So that is how I keep a buck in my colony. Thanks for watching!